How accurate can a war movie really get? Today, I'm counting down the films that actually earn their reputation for realism, movies that get every uniform right, use real tactics, and show the war exactly as soldiers lived it. You'll see why a forgotten Vietnam movie still impresses combat veterans, which German director put live bullets in the guns to terrify his actors, and what a real-life Navy captain said about his own submarine's portrayal on film. This movie stays under the radar for a lot of people, but if you know, you know. Patrick Duncan, the director, actually served in Vietnam with the 173rd Airborne. That experience comes through right away. Everything about this movie feels genuine, from the gear to the way the squad acts and talks. Professor Robert Niemi called it one of the most realistic Vietnam movies ever made. And military history author Gordon L. Rotman names it one of the most historically accurate war films out there. What makes this movie stand out is its style. It uses a found footage format years before it became a trend, with an Army cameraman embedded in the patrol to record footage for training. That one choice pulls you right into the unit, showing what soldiers really dealt with. War isn't non-stop action, it's long stretches of tension, then sudden violence. And you feel that in this film. Confusion is everywhere. The enemy stays hidden. Fire can come from anywhere. The movie puts you in the thick of it and never lets you forget how random and messy combat gets. Stalingrad, the 1993 German-language film, gets the Eastern Front right in a way that very few war movies even attempt. The story sticks with one squad of German soldiers following them from their first days on the front through the disaster of being encircled and left to die in the city. The German army takes most of Stalingrad. But after that, it's just misery, no way out, winter setting in, and Hitler refusing to order a breakout. Uniforms, weapons, equipment in this movie are all spot on. The battle scenes, as critics said, are virtuosic, but what hits hardest is the focus. This film doesn't zoom out and try to show the big picture. It doesn't care about the strategy or the generals or why the war happens. It just sits with these men as things get worse, as hope gets crushed. Every horror of the Eastern Front is here, tanks mowing down infantry, freezing men locked in hand-to-hand fights, commanders sending their own men to die. Stalingrad never looks away from the pointless suffering. That's what makes it so real. Elem Klimov's Come and See stands out as one of the most harrowing war films ever made. Klimov grew up during the siege of Stalingrad, and that trauma shows in every scene. He spent years fighting Soviet censors to get this film made. When it finally came out in 1985, nothing else looked like it or felt like it. The story tracks a young boy in Nazi-occupied Belarus in 1943 who joins the resistance and gets swept into a nightmare of violence. Nothing here is safe or comforting. Every atrocity is front and center, and by the end, the film delivers one of the most disturbing finales ever shot. Surreal moments and nightmarish visuals run through the movie, but that just makes it feel more real. Roger Deakins, who knows a thing or two about cinematography, calls out the Steadicam work. He says it puts you right in the middle of it all. Klimov refused to use studio tricks. He filmed it in natural light, let the actors go through actual exhaustion, and even used live bullets for certain scenes to get genuine, terrified reactions. Sound design shifts with the actors' physical states. Come and See feels like a fever dream, but it never loses touch with the reality of war. Saving Private Ryan changed war movies in 1998. Steven Spielberg based the story on a mix of real events, the deaths of the 5 Sullivan brothers, the real-life Nyland family, and the brutal reality of D-Day. The actual plot takes some liberties, but nobody disputes the film's reputation for realism, especially in that opening scene on Omaha Beach. Colonel Kevin Farrell, former chief of military history at West Point, praises how Spielberg captured the sheer chaos and confusion of D-Day. Nothing looks choreographed. Soldiers are scattered everywhere, nobody knows what's going on, and the whole invasion feels out of control. The sound of gunfire, the look of the weapons, even the landing craft, all authentic. Spielberg insisted on period-correct equipment and never holds the audience's hand. Military jargon comes rapid fire with no explanations, just like it would in the real thing. Stephen J. Rubin, author of Combat Films, points out that this refusal to explain the details only makes the film more real. Saving Private Ryan throws you in, and if you keep up, great, but it's not going to slow down for you. Platoon is what happens when someone who was actually there decides to tell the story. Oliver Stone served in Vietnam, earned a Bronze Star, and brought those memories to the screen. Platoon shows the jungle as an enemy, the landscape negating all that supposed U.S. technological superiority. It turns every fight into a dirty, confusing mess. James Deaver, a retired Marine and one of Hollywood's top technical advisors, calls the combat scenes in Platoon dead on. The soldiers look filthy and exhausted. The movie doesn't glamorize anyone. It just shows what these men went through. Back in 1987, Platoon was the first movie to really show how Vietnam looked and felt for the Americans who fought there. Before this, Hollywood either made the soldiers into monsters or perfect heroes. Stone went the other way. He just showed people caught in the worst circumstances trying to survive. That's why Platoon remains the gold standard for Vietnam War realism. Released in 1981, this film became a global hit for a reason. It's not just well made, it's probably the single most accurate depiction of life on a German U-boat in World War II. A lot of that comes down to the people involved. Two consultants, Heinrich Lehmann Willenbrock and Hans Joachim Krug, both served on U-boats during the war. Wolfgang Petersen, the director, went all in and built a near-perfect replica of the real U-96 submarine. That attention to detail shows in every shot. What sets the boat apart isn't just the technical accuracy, it's the way it captures the misery of life below the surface. The film never glamorizes anything. The plan was always to show how awful, cramped, and dirty things really were inside those subs. The way Petersen shot the combat is hyper-real. If you ever wondered what that level of tension actually feels like, this is about as close as you'll get without being there yourself. It's not hard to see why veterans respect it and why it still holds up all these years later. Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk stands out for a reason. Historian Michael Korda actually points out that the film has no main character and there's really no conventional narrative. The story is big. 340,000 British, French, and Belgian troops trapped at the port with German forces closing in. It's about the rescue itself, not individuals. Nolan avoids the standard war movie stuff. There are no scenes of generals or politicians explaining the situation. In fact, nobody in the film ever spells out that it's the German army and Air Force closing in on those soldiers. Instead, everything focuses on what the troops actually experienced. The tension, the uncertainty, and the constant feeling that every plan to escape just ends in another disaster. Former Marine Tan Vega gives Nolan credit for this. He says the film recreates exactly what it's like to take care of your fellow soldier while you're under non-stop bombardment. Aerial combat in the film gets called out as some of the most accurate ever put on screen. Costume designer Jeffrey Kurland put in the work to get every detail right. Even when it was nearly impossible to find real uniforms and equipment from the period, he did the research to make sure every piece in the film looked and felt authentic. Ridley Scott's Black Hawk Down takes on the 1993 Battle of Mogadishu, where U.S. Army Rangers and Delta Force went after Somali warlord Mohammed Farah Aidid. The mission fell apart. Two Black Hawks crashed and American troops got trapped, leading to a long, brutal fight. The film does catch criticism for simplifying history, especially for leaving out the Malaysian and Pakistani forces who played crucial roles, and for framing it as a basic white versus black conflict. But when it comes to depicting the chaos of the battle, it gets high marks. Stephen J. Rubin called it amazingly realistic in his book Combat Films. A retired Delta Force operator praised how well the film captured the violence of the action. A big reason for the realism is that the battle itself was well documented. The filmmakers had all the reports and first-hand accounts they could want. The U.S. military helped out, training the actors, letting them meet real soldiers. That kind of access doesn't happen often, and it shows. The end result is a film that puts you right in the thick of it, with details only someone who was actually there would know. Jarhead is a war movie that takes a different approach. It's based on Anthony Swofford's memoir, and what it gets right isn't the action, it's the boredom. The movie just nails how soul-crushingly dull military life can be. You don't get the Hollywood combat scenes here. Instead, you see the stuff that actually shapes soldiers. The friendships, the inside jokes, and the way guys deal with anxiety and confusion, especially when the orders from up top just do not make any sense. That absence of action scenes isn't a mistake. It lets the film focus on what Marines really go through every day, and it's honestly one of the most realistic looks at military life you're going to find. Now, the way wars are fought has changed a lot since this came out, so if you're in the military now or know someone who is, it might feel a little dated. But as a snapshot of that time and place, it's a classic. Master and Commander has a huge advantage in the accuracy department, the source material. Patrick O'Brien's books are famous for all the crazy level of detail he put in, and the movie runs with it. Watching this feels like a deep dive into how early 1800s sea combat actually worked. Everything comes across as genuine. The ships and how they work, the way the crew and officers interact, and just how insane naval battles could get. There's chaos, there's cannon fire, and yeah, guys literally swing from one ship to another with pistols stuck in their waistbands. Even the dialogue fits the time, and the fact that kids served in the British Navy, and sometimes as officers, shows up in the story. The way bullets and cannonballs tear through wood is exactly right, too. The realism goes all the way down to the sound. Sound designer Richard King did actual field recordings of real cannons and gunpowder blasts just to make sure the movie sounded right. This is the kind of detail that just makes everything feel real. This is Sam Mendes's take on World War I, and it started with his own family. He used his grandfather's stories as a jumping-off point, and the movie is built to look like it's happening in one single unbroken take. You follow two young British soldiers as they move through no man's land and deep into enemy territory, all to deliver a message that could save lives. Mendes brought in military advisors and historians to get every detail right, down to the way soldiers looked after their boots and kept their helmets in shape. The World War I Museum called out the accuracy and said the film got even the smallest things right, like the insignia on the back of a collar or the differences in trenches. If you want to check it, you can stack 1917 up against Peter Jackson's They Shall Not Grow Old, which uses restored World War I footage. That's the level of accuracy we're talking about. 1917 actually matches up to real film from the war it's showing. Hacksaw Ridge tells the real story of Desmond T. Doss, the only World War II Medal of Honor recipient who did it without ever firing a gun. Doss was a pacifist but still found a way to serve. He rescued 75 soldiers at Okinawa, and the movie doesn't hold back, showing how brutal that battle got. They filmed the combat scenes in Australia, so the set isn't exactly a copy of the real Hacksaw Ridge. Still, the movie gets the atmosphere and violence of the battle right. Attorney Don Kirchner, whose father fought in the 77th Division on Okinawa and actually was there, said the movie matched up with everything his dad described about that day. The most important part, the movie gets Doss's story right. He faced a ton of harassment from his own guys and commanding officers just because he wouldn't carry a weapon. The script even uses real things Doss said. For as unbelievable as his story sounds, the film shows it almost exactly how it happened.